There's only been 5
Yes.
ever.
Again,
You're going to go yes, okay. You are all in on Scheffler.
Yes, I think he's that good, and I think the era
Okay.
is down enough for him to get it.
I'll probably say yes as well. I'm with Sterling here. I think the era is kind of at a low point that he has a chance to go and dominate.
And I know Phil doesn't have one, so it's hard to say, like, well, if I think he's going to catch Phil, then he's going to get a career Grand Slam, because obviously you can do that, because that's Phil. I'm going to say yes still. I think over the next 2 or 3 years, we'll see him win a number of these because he's just playing that good and fully acknowledging that there's an element of maybe being prisoner of the moment. There's also an element of wishful thinking to have that guy that becomes a dominant force that people are watching and going, can Scheffler do it again? Is this the one that he gets the career Grand Slam? We're watching. Is this the one where he finally gets to 6? Okay, we're watching. And then more after that, can he get to 10, right? Who knows? Maybe he ends up with 3 in his career. Maybe his child changes things because he's made tons of money in his career and he's already got 2 green jackets and he goes, you know what, I'm loving life now. Maybe I don't need to go to the range today. Maybe I'm just hanging out with the kid. Well, and Ludwig Oberg is like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not sure. Do I go to the range today? I don't know. Video games? I have no idea. Is there a golf tournament next week? He was awesome to watch play. We'll take a timeout. We'll talk some Royals coming up next. why do you want to see somebody dominating golf, but most people don't want to see Mahomes keep dominating the NFL? And I think that's the difference between the individual sport and team sport. Like team sport, people get tired of it pretty quickly. Individual sport, you don't have the civic pride and people got tired of Tiger too. Like there were plenty of people that were rooting against Tiger. Like it was anti-Tiger, and that's where a little bit became I'm going to root for Phil because that might be the biggest competitor to knock off Tiger. 913-912-4810. This is a good text. Is that talk more K-State? Just kidding. I love the golf chatter. Long-standing joke for almost going on 5 years now. 913-912-4810 is the text line. The Royals lose the series over the weekend to the Mets, where they break out the bats for 11 runs with an odd lineup, and a lineup that I thought, really? Like, this is what we're doing today? And they score 11, and then your typical lineup scores a total of 2 runs on Friday and on Sunday as well. So I'm obviously, we've talked about how exciting this is and how, there feels to be some staying power, all of that stuff with what's going on. Injuries happen, and it's one of those things to where you just got to get through it. You got to find a way to get past it. Injuries are going on, especially with pitchers all over the baseball right now, with Spencer Strider going down. That's a tough one for the Braves. They've got to overcome that. Bobby Miller, shoulder inflammation for the Dodgers. They got to overcome that. Luckily, they've got, another all-star team ready to go. Salvi would be a huge blow if he were to miss some time. And I'm worried about missing some time. I don't think it was a knee contusion like they were talking about, and they even said it with a groin because he did the splits. And by the way, Marte, he slid on the fair side of the line. He slid inside the third base line. Okay, Salvi was set up on the inside of third base line, giving him a path to the outside. And when you see Marte slide, the line, the chalk is to his right. That's not accidental. I'm sorry, that's not accidental. He saw the ball, he felt the ball coming in, he slid, he could have gone around that, whatever. And then he acts like, oh, my bad. Bleep you, dude. It wasn't your bad. You did that on purpose. And you can't slide on the inside part of it and then act like, oh, it was an accident. No, I mean, he gave you the outside part, which is required, right? He gave you the lane, and he would have tagged you out. The last 14 games for Salvi. And the first 2 games, it's like, oh, God, he's looking old. He looks old. These first 2 games against the Twins, Royals weren't scoring runs, and it's like this, Vinny's batting third, and he's struggling. There's 2 games in, right? Salvi looks old, and he's still swinging at everything. Why would anybody throw him a strike? Just throw him breaking stuff on the outside. And in the last 14 games, he's OPSing over 1,000, 4 home runs, 15 RBIs. He's been crushing the ball. And playing a really good, catcher as well, playing pretty damn good backstop. So that's concerning because of the good feels for this team. If he goes on the 15-day or misses a little bit of time with a groin injury, and when somebody's back there as a catcher, the groin's important. And so that's a concern because injuries are going to happen. Just how do they overcome this if it is Salvi, someone who's that spiritual leader, that emotional leader, if he's not around for a couple of weeks?
It's brutal if you lose him for, a month or a month plus, just because the way he was hitting right now. And, I think we're at this point in Salvi's career where you can put the term, well, what if he stayed healthy? Think about some of the injuries in his past. He slipped on stairs and tore his knee up.
That was Matt Stairs, by the way, that he slipped on. He was climbing over Matt Stairs, and he slipped.
Pinch hitter.
He has that injury, right? Yeah. He's got Tommy John as a catcher. He has the blurriness in his eye. He's got the vision problem. And then you look at a situation like this, it's like it wasn't like he was running to second base like Luis Robert was this past weekend, and something blows out. He ruptures something. Yohan Moncada. It's just a collision at the plate, and he gets stretched out, and this happens. And yes, I think not just as a leadership standpoint, but as your 4-hole hitter, losing him when you are 10-6 this early on in the year, it would be a really big blow to this offense. Now, Freddie Fermin, it's a big spot for him. If he can step in for 2 weeks here and they can weather the storm, that's huge. But it's also like, well, what is he going to look like when he's back? He was rolling at this point. Now you have however amount of time off, and you're expected to come back and be the 4-hole hitter. It's a big question they're going to have to answer.
Before I get to what happens if he were to miss time, going to what you said just defensively as well, which I think has been very impressive. Again, smaller sample size. His framing metrics his framing metrics have been the 90th percentile. Like we always,
he's +1, right?
better.
Yeah, +1.
Much better.
Called strikes above average, 87th, which is kind of that. And then even blocking is 84th percentile. Again, his defense has been phenomenal this year.
And with Angel Hernandez, his pitch framing, he takes the pitch and the strike and then puts it over to the side. And then Hernandez is like, oh, well, that's a strike. Yeah, you take it actually in and move it over to the right.
Well, which is interesting with Freddie Fermin, actually, he didn't help Stratton last night. Like he which I know we'll get to, but like
neither did the non-robot ump.
Agreed.
Chris Siegel.
But I'm watching him and I'm like, Fermin, why?
I'd rather have Jason Siegel. But go ahead, Fermin.
But I'm like for me, I think Fermin's known as a good defensive catcher, but he wasn't last night. And you're sitting here going, Salvage looked great back there all season long. Fermin has, quite frankly, not. That does make me nervous, not just offensively, but defensively as well. And then also, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Austin Nola, who's in the minors right now, is also injured. So you're looking at your backup catcher, the catcher you brought in for insurance. Well, if he's injured too, where do the Royals go? Because
Sounds like MJ Melendez. Get the catching gear out. But I'm joking, obviously.
But what would they do? Where do they? Is it Porter? I mean, where do they go from here?
I'd imagine it's Porter because of the way he's hitting in Omaha, and I think he's got experience last year. But man, I just don't know how long you could go without Salvador Perez in this lineup and expect to have the same sort of production. I mean, it isn't the absolute worst time for one of your star players to miss time, because this also shows just how good this lineup can be. I mean, Salvador Perez isn't, Bobby Witt Jr. in the middle lineup, where if you lose Bobby Witt Jr., I mean, that lineup is completely different. Salvador Perez, of course, is a huge part of that lineup, but it's going to show just how important Vinny Pasquantino has to be, how important MJ Melendez has to be, Nelson Velasquez, even guys like Hunter Renfroe. And, it's good that this next 3-game series, maybe they get good news today, and it's a strained groin. He's going to miss a couple of games. It's a very minor strain. We're just going to get him off his feet. You play Chicago, with or without Salvador Perez, you're likely going to win that series. Don't want to get too ahead of myself, but the White Sox have 2 wins, right? So there are worse times to lose your 4-hole hitter, but it made the loss yesterday that much worse. Yeah. It's like you get a great outing from Cole Reagans, just like Greinke back in his prime. They can't get him any runs. Alec Marsh has done arguably the worst. He's 3-0. They've won. Reagans is 0-3, or they've lost all 3 games he started, or 4 games. And that's the frustrating part. And then you lose Salvador Perez. It's like, man, he was the only guy yesterday that seemed to have a good read on Buto, whatever it was. And before that, he hit well in game 2. He hit well in game 1. And he's been hitting well really ever since the first 2-game stretch for the Royals. Right. And that is a gut punch. But now it's put up or shut up time for a guy like Freddie Fermin. Yeah.
Of the 4 Cole Reagan starts, twice he's left the mound with no runs given up, and he's yet to pick up a win this year. Lugo's been good, so it's not like, well, Lugo's 2-0. Yeah, he's got 2-0 with a 1.45 ERA, so he's actually been pretty good. But Alec Marsh is the funny one that
they give him the run support.
Like, oh, Marsh is on the mound. Let's go get 10. Let's go get 10, guys. Let's go score some runs. And the frustrating part about yesterday is, I mean, if an umpire has a different strike zone than just your typical, here's your box, and it's, a strike or a ball. All right, the umpire calls a low strike, but he calls it in the entire game. He's been calling the low strike. Okay. He's not given the, high and outside corner to, the righties, high and inside to lefties. He's just not calling it there, right? So you just have to adjust to that. It'd be one thing. If it wasn't for the fact that Cole Reagans was getting the calls during the game and other pitchers getting the calls during the game, that Chris Stratton threw 3 strikes to Jeff McNeil that were all called balls that were strikes in the game. That's the frustrating part, is you're out of the inning. McNeil never took the bat off his shoulder, just sat there for 5 pitches and got walked, with 3 of them being strikes and 3 of them being in the same spot. The same spot. One of them was called a strike. Another one in the exact same spot was called a ball. But somehow one of us is a strike. It's inconsistent in the at-bat. Like, that's what's absurd, is that those were strikes. And should Stratton have done better? Should he have not have walked 4 guys? Yes, of course, he should not have walked 4 guys. But even to Nemo, it's 2 of those were strikes that were called balls. And other pitchers during the game were getting that call. And that's a frustrating part. And we talk about the technology to be able to avoid this now. But, it's not even Angel Hernandez. Like Angel Hernandez did the exact opposite with, Wyatt Langford, bases loaded, 1 out, Wyatt Langford up there, 5 pitches come in, and Langford never swings the bat because all 5 of them were balls. All 5. It was a 2-0 count. There was a pitch that was outside that Wyatt Langford took, strike 1. The next pitch was even further outside, didn't swing, strike 2. The next pitch was the most egregious miss in the StatCast era that Angel Hernandez called strike 3, 7 inches outside of the strike zone. 7 inches. That was called a ball in our 9U tournament we played this weekend. All right, that was called a ball. It was like, it was a good spot. Good spot. Come on, find the strike zone. That's all right. Ooh, that was close, buddy. That was a ball this weekend, and it was a strike with Angel Hernandez. Like that absurdity when you see that called a strike, and then Chris Stratton versus Jeff McNeil, those 3 are called balls. Like, how do you know what the strike zone is? That to me is the robo-ump, is that if you're a batter or a pitcher, you know what the strike zone's going to be. We don't have to guess. Oh, I'm going to take that pitch. Oh, it was called a strike. Ooh, that was called a ball.
What's interesting, too, is Chris Segal was actually phenomenal in his game outside of the 8th inning.
Because those were strikes throughout the game,
well,
and then they were balls.
I don't know if anyone ever goes to umpire scorecards. It's very fun to watch on Twitter. They broke it down. He was 95% overall accuracy, but then you look at the 8th inning, and it was just brutal.
It was terrible.
And that's what it came down to.
At least the 8th inning wasn't a big deal. At least it wasn't an impactful inning.
If it looks at the overall favor, which they do, just how they break down who got helped by the missed calls. The Mets were 1.47 runs for the Mets. How much did the Royals lose by in this game?
A single run.
Yeah. So, again, it's one of those frustrating situations where you can have a really solid game, and then the ump just in the 8th inning decided that, you know what? No. Let's just try and bring this thing down. And all of the 3 most impactful calls went against the Royals. One of them actually included in the 6th inning. The one miss he had prior to the 8th was a 3-2 count. Ball was called a strike on Michael Garcia.
That's right. So. Yeah, I do remember that at bat, too.
Well, you got to play, both sides as well, because I think it was game 2, James MacArthur was in the game. It was 3-0 on, I think it was Brandon Nimmo. He threw ball 4. It wasn't close. And then that went from first and second, 1 out to 2 outs and runner at first. And that then eventually kept Pete Alonso on deck. So then you look at game 3, people can be upset with Chris Stratton, and he does deserve blame, right? If you are missing, because there were a couple of bats he wasn't close. He was missing all over. And umpires, tale as old as time, if you are missing everywhere, they are not going to give you the benefit of the doubt of a strike. However, you also look at the bat to McNeil, where he didn't take the bat off his shoulders. If just one of those is a strike, the game plan at the plate changes for the hitter. That's what's lost in all of this, is if you're up there and it's 0-0, the Royals are now down 1, or it's runner at second, and it goes to 2-0, I'm not swinging until he throws a strike. If one of them is a strike and it's 1-1, it changes. It changes the complexion of the at-bat, and that's what Chris Stratton then couldn't get over, is then he couldn't find the zone, and he's missing there. Then Bader, of course, has the swinging bunt that Garcia can't handle. It's like that is how it's always going to go. But I've looked at baseball now, and, I do want a human element in the game. But also there has to be at some point a form of accountability.
Yeah.
There are good umpires in this game. There are also really bad and arrogant umpires where they go, that's what I saw, and I don't have to answer to it. I don't have to answer any questions, and I know my job's secure because of the umpires union. I don't know if there was a threat of, if you're bad enough like Angel Hernandez, we can fire your ass. Maybe they take it in moments like that a little bit more seriously, or maybe more sensitive to the fact that you just ruined the game for a pitcher who, by the way, is pitching for his career, for his job. If Chris Stratton doesn't improve and we get to June, he's got a 6.57 ERA, he's losing his job. An umpire like Angel Hernandez, or in a situation like Chris Siegel, if you blow call after call after call, you're still fine. You don't have to answer to it. Oh, it's a human game. He framed the pitch good, and that was outside to me, or that wasn't a strike, or that was a strike to me. And that's why there is such a divide between the fans and players, managers and umpires, is because umpires are this protected group, whereas managers and players are not. If they don't perform well, they lose their job. Umpires can be as bad as they want, as arrogant as they want. They will not lose their job.
And I don't know who the umpire was, and we'll take a break, but I don't know who the umpire was, and I should go back and look and what even the situation was or who the pitcher was. But there was video over the weekend of a guy walking off the mound, and, they always have to check the hands, right? The home plate umpire walked over to him and said, "My bad, I missed that." Just walked right over to the starting pitcher, and the pitcher was like, "All right," But, I mean, that accountability of like,
That's great.
Dude, that's my bad. I totally missed that one. Don't worry, because if you put it there again, it's a strike. So that's not where my strike zone is. I just missed that one. I got you next time. That was a miss. That's not a different strike zone of what I'm calling the rest of the game. Because that's also letting them know you can expect this. Now, instead of going, well, that was called a ball last time, so is it a strike now if I throw it? Yes, it will be. My bad. I missed that one. Because that's going to happen too. We'll take a timeout, come back, more zone next. Draft coming up next Thursday. Chiefs talking today with phase 1 of OTAs going on. And Andy Reid, along with Nick Bolton, along with Patrick Mahomes, will be talking in the next hour or so. And we'll hear from them and see what they have to say about phase 1 starting, see what Mahomes has to say about meeting Lionel Messi. And also, one of his receivers may or may not play the first couple 4+ games. So we'll hear from them coming up this hour. Josh Kaiser coming up at noon, Mick Schaefer at 1 o'clock. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling along. Is there a concern with the bullpen? Only a couple of guys? I mean, we're talking about Stratton getting squeezed, but, leverage situations. We'll talk about that next.
Your food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Sterling Holmes, Jack Johnson, Dylan Michaels. We'll talk with Josh Kaiser coming up at noon. One Royal Way podcast. Mick Schaefer at 1 o'clock. Learn funniest best with Mick. And, of course, we'll hear from the Chiefs coming up this hour. Phase 1 of OTAs starting. So Andy Reid, Nick Bolton, and Patrick Mahomes will talk. We will hear from them and let you hear what they have to say as they will be defending their Super Bowl championship yet again, and they will be the reigning Super Bowl champions when the draft comes up on a week from Thursday. And we'll hear from them coming up this hour. 913-912-4810. We talked a lot about the Masters and Scottie Scheffler and what he was able to do over the weekend. And obviously the Royals and losing the series. Tex says Porter's hitting 412 in AAA right now. I mean, it sounds like Carter Jensen to me. I mean, come on, man. Just get the kid up here. Let's go, man. Let's do this, man. 913-912-4810 says not even mentioning how many concussions he's likely had. Talking about, Salvi and the injuries there. Tex says, let the umpire call strikes and balls, but let the machine beep in the ear to let him know which one it was. Strike. It's a good call. It's a good call. Ball. It's a little outside.
100% accuracy.
Have you seen the minors, though, what they do? Like, they just say, a couple of times, they'll just say, do the replay. Paul Skeens is the king of this.
It was brilliant. Did you see that, Jack, over the weekend? When Paul Skeens, the same inning, he had a 2-2 count, and he throws a pitch on the inside, and the umpire called it a ball, and he was like, challenge. And they were talking about, like, they want the catchers to challenge, they don't want the pitchers to challenge. And the ball was like just barely a strike. Like the strike zone cut the ball in half, but it's a strike. That guy's out. 2 batters later, 3-2 count, almost the exact same spot, umpire ball, challenge. Even less of a strike, but still a strike. After review, the call is overturned. It was a strike. Strike 3, the batter's out of the inning. Like, you're talking about, millimeters. That
got a
Paul,
good feel for the zone.
That Paul Skeens is like, no, dude, I know a strike. I know that was a strike. It was just brilliant how close those things were. And he's like, nope, replay it again. Replay it. That's a strike. Not just like frustrated, like, bleep that, replay it. It missed by 3 inches. Come on, man. No, just barely hitting the strike zone was just awesome to see.
Yeah, I wish the majors, and they actually might, hopefully, because they like to, try things out in the minors. Mm-hmm. The bigger bags, the shift, the pitch clock. This would be one that I think would be very entertaining. Almost every single sport has the ability to challenge. Baseball has the ability, but not when it comes to balls and strikes. This, to me, would be a step in the right direction. Now, how many can you do? Because that's going to slow the game down. But you already sped the game up so much in the pitch clock.
It doesn't slow it down much, though, because it's a lot like tennis in the replay, a challenge. It's pretty quickly. Boom, that was in, that was out. This was pretty quickly. Let's challenge. Challenging the call. They show the pitch tracks. Strike. It's a strike. Let's move on. It's not, let's wait for New York to get back to us. And we're sitting around. We're showing the replay over and over again. Those replays are quicker, but are they quick enough to where you don't want to slow the game down?
Yeah, that's where I think it'd be a problem, is that if it was unlimited challenges, I mean, think about throwing a strike. Like Chris Stratton could have done that 3 times and was like, okay, back to that was a strike. I think if there was a limit, maybe, but there has to be something, or either umpires that have a better field of zone, because that's the thing we go back to, is that umpires, there are good ones in this game. There are guys that are nearly flawless at their job. You can excuse, a close call at first, a tag play like that. That's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. For a strike zone, when you're missing that badly, it's like this can happen at the college level. This can happen in high school. This can happen in Little League, but you can't do it at the big league level. And that's where it's just unfortunate. Like baseball, it shouldn't have to be so many things reviewed because you're that bad at your job, right?
That's what I've talked about with the NFL. Like, how about just be better?
Yeah, just let's be a little bit more focused in. And if you miss a big call, it happens. But when it's consistent, it's 3 times in 1 plate appearance. That's when we have these conversations of, should we have the robot umpire? Should we have, something telling them what is a strike and what is a ball? And they're basically just a human standing behind them. Because at that point, hire anybody. Yeah, like, just hire me. I can stand back there and it tells me it's a strike or ball. Yeah, I'll do that.
I'd love to do that.
I wouldn't want to get hit in the face like the umpire did in game 2. That staggers me. But, that's baseball, I think, has gotten right where they want to be of what you can review, what should be a human element part of the game. But it's still frustrating that you can have this many mistakes, not once or twice over 9 innings. Like, we're talking 7 or 8 problems.